Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia, and today it's time for Friday Reads. Although it is Saturday, I actually filmed a Friday Reads yesterday, but I deleted it before I could post it. I messed up in the editing process, and I didn't mess up and then I chose to delete it. I accidentally deleted it while I was editing. So I lost the whole thing, and I was not in the mood to film it again, especially after I had also bungled up on my Tuesday video. I don't know what is going on. The video gods are not smiling on me this week, but I just want to say thank you to everyone from the Tuesday screw up who sent me notices and let me know that there was a problem where I was exposing my address to the world. And somehow it took me multiple tries to cover up all of the exposures and get it posted. So thank you to my friends who helped me out with that. I am very sorry if you left comments on the original posting because I lost all of those when I took the video down. So sorry. And now, sorry again. I will recreate my Friday Reads video, but the levels of intellectual spark, insight, and wisdom that I attained in the original version, I can never aspire to achieve those again. So maybe at least this one will be shorter. We can hope. One time I made a really short, fast video because I was sick and I was coughing a lot, and everyone said, "Oh, we love this format." And I thought, is that code for please make your videos shorter? Maybe you were trying to tell me something. Anyway, so TV viewing, we're watching The Bear. We have 2 episodes left. Season 4, much better than season 3. 1 and 2 were fantastic. 3 was eh, and 4 is an improvement. And then we're watching Murderbot, which is a delight. And it makes me wonder if I should have read the books. I don't think I want to go back and read the books now, having been watching the show, but it's quite enjoyable. I finished a few things in the past week. First of all, I read A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. This was a reread. It was a fun reread that I read for the Bardroom Project, which is hosted by Melinda from A Web of Stories on her Discord, where we read Shakespeare, mostly plays, but sometimes also poetry, sonnets, etc. So this was a play that I have read a few times over the years, and it's not the deepest in terms of plot and theme, but I do enjoy it. I found in this rereading that I really deeply dislike the character of Demetrius, who is crueler than necessary and kind of menacing and threatening, that I don't know, somehow this escaped me in previous reads. So he was bothering me. I like the part about the rude mechanicals, the group of random people with different kinds of day jobs that come together and try to put together a play, a Greek mythology play, on the occasion of the Duke's wedding, and their play is terrible. I like that part. I think this one attracted me as a kid because it had fairies and magical creatures, this and The Tempest. And I still like those in the play, but I think upon rereading these, I think The Tempest has more depth and substance, but I do enjoy Midsummer Night's Dream. It was fun reread. Then also I read another play. I read The Cherry Orchard by Anton Chekhov, and this is one of this month's plays in my project Endless Drama, where we read plays from the 20th and 21st century. And I got a little jump and finished the first play for this month, and the discussion is just beginning, so I'm not really going to get into a big talk about it right now, but it is a play from the early 20th century that really captures a moment in time of great change in Russian society, and really a great time of change in the world. I think that's one reason why it's a classic. It's not just about, well, here's what was going on in Russia and here's this family dealing with it. It has more universal applications than that, but it is about a family that has a large estate with a cherry orchard, and the matriarch of this family has been gone for 5 years, and she comes back home right before the property is scheduled to be auctioned off because they are out of money. The family's inability to grasp this impending doom and brush it off and think, oh, we'll put something together, money will come, it's fine. Uh, Different levels of acceptance, understanding, denial going on, and then the people in the family of different ages and different social classes caught in the midst of these changing times. It's very interesting. So I'm not going to say more about it because the conversation's just begun. But I thought that maybe it was a reread, but as I read it, I realized it was not. I have not read The Cherry Orchard before, but now I'm glad that I did. And I also learned that Chekhov died when he was only 44. This was his last play. So just as it was coming to the stage, that's when he died. Another book that I read that came in right under the wire, finishing up my June reading, was Washington Square by Henry James. And this was a buddy read with my friend Michael, and we read it as a follow-up after reading The Master by Colin Toiving that I talked about last week, which is a fictional look at the life of Henry James. And so that, of course, triggered an interest in Henry James. This is a book I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed it again. And the funny part is there's only a few characters. This is a very character-driven novel, mainly focusing on a family trio. Dr. Sloper, a well-to-do physician in New York City in 1880, his young adult daughter, Catherine, and then his sister, Lavinia, who lives with them and helped him after his wife passed away shortly after Catherine's birth. And so most of the plot is about those three and what happens when Morris Townsend comes along, a young man who is interested in marrying Catherine. There's a couple of side characters that have very small but important roles. The sister of Dr. Sloper's deceased wife that he consults a few times, and she's like the voice of reason. She only has a few scenes, but every time she's the one who says the things that the reader is thinking, things we would like to say to Dr. Sloper, only though she says them maybe in a more kindly fashion than I would choose. And then also one scene with Morris's sister that is very short but very important. But mostly it's about this trio of people, and with Morris as the interloper. So Dr. Sloper does not like Morris and thinks that he's a gold digger. And the problem with Dr. Morris is that he is a jerk. And he's really bad. And I kind of remembered him being problematic, but I forgot how bad he was. He finds his own daughter disappointing. He cares for her, but he doesn't like her. He finds her underwhelming. He thinks that she's passably good looking. He doesn't think she has much personality. At the same time, he wants to control her and expects obedience, but he's also disappointed that she's not more rebellious and doesn't really have a lot of drama or zip in her personality. And it's a very sad situation because she adores and loves and respects her father, and he does not respect her in turn. And so this opposition starts up on the topic of Morris. And the one thing that Sloper and Catherine do have in common is extreme obstinacy. They are both so stubborn, just stubborn as mules. And it leads to long standoffs between these two. And meanwhile, we have the Aunt Lavinia, who I completely deleted this woman from my memory banks of this play. And I don't know how this happened because she is the most entertaining character in the book. She is not a drama queen, but like a drama vampire. She thirsts for drama. She thirsts for romance. She should have been a writer because the very inkling of this possible courtship, she is so excited and all in and inserts herself and does all kinds of furtive, unnecessarily complicated and overwrought things to try to make this thing happen. And she's just a real piece of work. So there is a little bit of humor in some of the situations, but there's also a layer of sadness at just how this way that this man regards his daughter and what happens. And it's kind of beside the point of whether or not he's right about Morris Townsend. I'm not going to tell you how that plays out. Or the book was really, really a character book, and mostly it's all in the scenes, in the conversations, different combinations of two people having conversations. And it's not so much about Washington Square, which Michael and I talked about. We thought we were going to get more atmosphere about the setting, because it's actually the title, and really it wasn't there. It was a very drawing room conversation kind of book, and the city itself didn't provide a whole lot of background. I really enjoyed the reread, and I do recommend Washington Square. I think it's a good entry point for Henry James because it's not as long and drawn out and overly wordy as some of his work is. It's pretty tight, and the plot moves along and has a certain amount of suspense to it, even though it's not melodramatic. So I do recommend it. So another book that I finished just last night was Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. This was written in 1968. This is one of the books that I put into my science fiction double feature project, another wing of my 60 before 60 project. Today's word is project. And this is a book I've been meaning to read for decades, ever since I first saw Blade Runner back in the 80s, and I've seen it a few times since, and I knew that this was the source material. And I've seen a lot of the movies that have been adapted from Philip K. Dick's works over the years, and I've always meant to go and read some of these works, and I've just kind of started. Last year I read the story that was the basis for Minority Report, and it is called, not Minority Report. No, Total Recall. The story that is the basis for Total Recall, which is, we can remember it for you wholesale. I'll put it up on the screen if that's not right. So I'm kind of stepping into reading these works. So I did finally read this, and because it's part of a project, and we just started the month, I don't want to spill all of the beans right now. So in the future, there has been a radioactive event on Earth that's rendered it not entirely uninhabitable, but undesirable and hazardous to your health. So there are people living there. The radioactive dust does affect you eventually, shorten your lifespan, damage your health. Some people have cognitive problems, and other people have immigrated to Mars. And that's where industry is taking place. That's where wealthier people are living. And there is a corporation called the Rosen Corporation that produces androids for slave labor, basically, and to do unwanted tasks, factory work, physical labor. But some androids, or Andes as they are called, escape this fate and sneak off and come to Earth and try to blend in and live on Earth. And there are bounty hunters who hunt down these androids and retire them, meaning they kill them. And so enter our main character, Rick Deckard, who is a bounty hunter, and he has been assigned to find a group of escaped androids that are a high level of android production, and it's harder to detect whether or not they're human. He's used to administering a test that measures the empathy reactions in a person, and that kind of can tell him whether or not someone is human or not, because physically they pass. You have to dissect someone to figure out whether or not they're an android. But this new group is tricky. The assignment is challenging. So I could say a lot more about Rick and his priorities and obsessions, but I'm not going to get into it right now because we just started the talk, as I said. But that's kind of the setup. So it felt like, reading it, that I could see how it was the source material for Blade Runner, but it was as if they took certain elements of the plot setup and the world building and then borrowed a couple of character names and then just wrote a different story, because this is very, very different from Blade Runner. I do definitely have some thoughts about it's not exactly the portrayal of women. It's more like the portrayal of men's attitudes towards women in this book, which I know it's 1968, but I still have some thoughts and I will be expressing them in the Discord. So, but overall, I'm really glad I finally read it. It moved very quickly. I think that's a lot when I read a book that's become a movie is why didn't they just make this story? Why, I mean, the story that they made, Blade Runner, is a good story, but why don't they do this story? There's a lot more going on. This would be good for a Netflix type adaptation and get more into the entire societal situation and what's going on with these people. There's a lot of interesting stuff that didn't make it into the movie. So I would be interested. There's so many treatments of novels coming out recently, and Apple TV actually is doing quite a lot of interesting science fiction. So hey, Apple TV, maybe take a second look at this, the original novel. Might be time to do a new spin on it. All right, so that brings us up to my current reads. I am currently reading a memoir, Austen Years, a memoir in 5 novels by Rachel Cohen. Rachel Cohen chronicles in this book the difficult time in her life. She was very close to her father, and he had had cancer, and it reoccurred in between the births of her 2 children, and he passed away. And so during a very short span in her life, she lost her father and welcomed her 2 children. During these times, during this short set of years, she found herself closely reading and rereading Jane Austen's novels. And in this book, she weaves together the experiences that she was going through navigating grief and early parenthood with literary criticism, some literary history about Jane Austen and her family, her life, the societal constraints on women that inform some of the plots and character development in her novels. So it's just a swirl of things that is satisfying to me. And one thing that I really find interesting in here is that during this time where she found herself struggling to read other types of works for a while, and she was just rereading these Austen novels, and people assumed that that was a comfort reading mechanism, which would be totally fine. But to her, that's not really what it was. It was resonating with her, and she was finding deeper levels of connection and meaning in the works. It wasn't just, I'm just going to read something where I know everything turns out well. She actually found a lot more in there. She found parallels to her grief, parallels to the concepts of change and acceptance and growth. So it's all very interesting. So I am enjoying this. I think if you love to reread Jane Austen novels and you are in that Jane Austen club who finds new things every time you read them, the human experience represented in these novels, I think that you will enjoy Cohen's memoir. And on that note, I am also reading Emma with the Jane Austen in July read-along group, and what a joy it is. I read this book several times. It never gets old. I love this book, and I'm reading it. I started out following the pace, which is 2 chapters a day. I got a little bit ahead last night because I just felt like reading some more. So I'm not going to go way ahead. I want to stay sort of in the midst of the conversation. And I don't think I've ever read Emma with a group or with a buddy so that I could actually talk about the book as I was reading it. So it's a real pleasure to do that and see other people's insights and differences of opinion about characters. And I'm just enjoying this very much. Finally, I am currently reading the poetry book that I received from my Deep Vellum Press subscription, my first item. I love the way that this is made. The poems themselves, they're not exactly perfect for me. I feel, and I really hesitate to say that I feel like it could be an age thing, but for me, maybe not for everybody. There could be a 90-year-old person out there who is just absolutely devouring this. But for me, I'm reading it and thinking, I would have loved this in my 20s. Maybe not as much now. I'm liking pieces of it off and on. I have found a poem in the middle of the book called Planet of the Apes that I like quite a lot. It's a love poem, and it does reference that classic movie that I also love. And I'm going to continue to read it. I like it enough that it's in that category of something I wouldn't have picked out for myself, but it's nice to read something sometimes that it's not such a bad fit that you don't want to read it, but it's kind of a little off, and so you feel like you're getting a little window into thinking about, well, why would someone else really love this? Let me think about that reader while I'm still being this reader. And that is the way in which I am enjoying these poems. And I think I'm going to start another book this weekend. That sounds like I have a lot going on at once, but not really, because Emma is a multiple time reread, and then I've got the memoir going with it. So I think I am ready for The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This has been sitting and looking at me. The buffalo's been looking at me and calling out for me to read this book. So I think I'm going to start, because this is so drastically different that I think it would be a good companion piece to be reading at the same time. So let me know about any of those books that you have read or are interested in, or what are you reading this weekend that you are excited about. Let me know what's going on, and I will be back in a few days. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.